On the morning of my 50th birthday, I woke up before the sun, not because I was excited, not because I felt celebrated, but because grief never learned how to sleep in my house. The ceiling fan hummed softly above me, stirring the air the way it had for decades. The other side of the bed was already cold. My husband, Daniel, had slept in his study again, said he'd been working late, the same excuse he'd been using more often over the last few years. I lay there staring at the faint crack in the ceiling plaster, tracing it with my eyes like a familiar map. 50 years old, a milestone, a life measured in chapters, some joyful, some shattered. I reached to the nightstand and picked up the framed photo I always kept close. Our daughter, not the one still living, the one we lost. Emily had been 6 when she died, a sudden illness, the kind doctors explain with careful words and sympathetic eyes, the kind that leaves parents hollowed out forever. After the funeral, Daniel and I stopped touching, stopped laughing, stopped being a couple in any way that mattered. Or at least that's what I believed. I dressed slowly that morning. Choosing a soft blue dress, Daniel once said, made my eyes look brighter. I applied my makeup carefully. Nothing. Dramatic, calm, composed. The kind of woman people describe as gracious or strong, because they don't know what else to say to someone who survived loss. Downstairs, the house buzzed with quiet activity. Caterers setting up, my sister arranging flowers, my living daughter Lily moving nervously between rooms, checking decorations and the guest list. "Mom," she said when she saw me, her face lighting up. "Happy birthday." She hugged me tightly, like she always did when she sensed I needed grounding. "You okay?" she whispered. "I'm fine," I said. And for once it wasn't a lie. The party was Daniel's idea. Big, loud, public. He said I deserved it. "You've spent enough years grieving," he'd told me weeks earlier. His voice oddly rehearsed. "Let people celebrate you." I smiled then. The same smile I was wearing now. By evening, the house was full. Friends, family, colleagues, people from every era of our lives. Laughter echoed off the walls. Glasses clinked. Someone played soft jazz in the background. Daniel appeared just before the speeches were supposed to begin. He looked nervous, adjusting his tie, wiping his hands discreetly on his trousers. "You look beautiful," he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. "Thank you," I replied. Lily stood close to me, her hand brushing mine. I squeezed it gently. Then Daniel cleared his throat. "Everyone," he said, tapping his glass. "If I could have your attention." The room quieted. "I want to say a few words about my incredible wife," he continued. 50 years of strength, 50 years of grace, and, well, tonight is also about honesty. That word landed wrong. Honesty. I felt Lily stiffen beside me. Daniel gestured toward the front door. "I've carried a secret for a long time," he said, voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. "And I believe tonight is the right time to share it." The door opened. A woman stepped inside. Younger than me? Mid-30s maybe. Dark hair pulled back neatly. She held the hand of a boy, about 12 years old. The room froze. "This," Daniel said, swallowing hard, "is my second family. I've been hiding them for 12 years. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a glass. I heard my sister whisper my name. The boy looked confused, frightened. The woman avoided my eyes. Daniel kept talking. "I know this is shocking. I know this hurts. But I couldn't live with the lie anymore. This child deserves to be acknowledged." Lily turned toward me, her face drained of color. "Mom?" she whispered, horrified. "What is he saying?" I felt the weight of every eye in the room pressing against me, waiting for me to break, to scream, to collapse. Instead, I smiled. A soft, steady smile, Daniel noticed. His eyebrows knit together. This wasn't the reaction he expected. "I knew," I said calmly. The room went dead silent. Daniel blinked. You what?" I stepped forward, my heels clicking lightly against the hardwood floor. I repeated, "I knew." Murmurs erupted. Daniel's face flushed. "You knew?" He laughed nervously. "Then why—" I raised my hand gently. "Before we continue, I have something for you." I nodded toward Lily. She swallowed, then reached beneath the table and pulled out a small box, simple, black, wrapped neatly. She handed it to me with trembling fingers. I turned back to Daniel and placed it in his hands. "This is for you," I said. "What is this?" he asked, confused. "A gift," I replied. "Open it." The woman near the door took a step back. The boy clutched her hand tighter. Daniel hesitated. Then he lifted the lid. His smile vanished. His hands began to tremble. Inside the box were documents, photographs, bank statements, court filings. Proof. 12 years of secrets laid bare in ink and paper. Daniel's face went pale. His mouth opened but no sound came out. Lily leaned in close to me, her voice barely audible. "Mom," she whispered, awe and relief mixing in her tone. "You did it." I kept my eyes on Daniel. "This party," I said quietly, "is just the beginning." And as the room held its breath, I knew. The man who thought he'd humiliate me had just walked into a trap he never saw coming. The silence after Daniel opened the box was louder than any scream. People leaned forward, trying to see what had stolen the color from his face. Others looked at me, confused, recalculating everything they thought they knew about the quiet woman, who had just smiled through betrayal. Daniel closed the box slowly, as if that might erase its contents. You went through my things?" he stammered. I tilted my head. "You left your life everywhere, Daniel. You just assumed I was too broken to notice." Lily stayed close to me, her arm linked through mine. I could feel her heartbeat racing. The woman, shifted awkwardly near the door. "What is this?" she asked Daniel, her voice sharp now. "What did you give her?" Daniel didn't answer. "So I did. 12 years ago," I said, projecting my voice just enough for the room to hear. "My husband buried one daughter and secretly celebrated the birth of another child." A gasp. A sob. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." The boy's eyes widened. He looked up at Daniel, searching for reassurance that never came. "That's not," Daniel began. "Don't," I interrupted softly. "You've done enough talking for one lifetime." I gestured to the box. Inside are copies, DNA confirmation, property transfers, tuition payments, medical insurance, a second mortgage you thought I'd never question, and emails, so many emails. I paused, letting that sink in. "You were sloppy," I added. Grief made me quiet. "You mistook that for blindness." Daniel's lips trembled. "This was private." "You had no right?" "No right?" I repeated. "You lived a double life in my house. You used our grief as camouflage." Lily's grip tightened. The guests were no longer guests. They were witnesses. I turned away from Daniel then, addressing the room instead. "Some of you were there when we buried Emily," I said. "You saw me fall apart. You brought casseroles. You whispered that time would heal me." My voice stayed steady, even as memories tried to claw their way back. "What none of you knew," I continued, "was that while I was attending grief counseling, my husband was attending birthday parties. First steps, first words, a whole childhood, paid for with money from our shared accounts." The woman finally spoke. "He told me you knew," she said, her voice defensive. "He said you didn't care anymore, that your marriage was over." I looked at her then, really looked. "You believe that?" I asked gently. "That a mother who lost a child simply stops caring?" Her expression faltered. "I didn't stop caring," I said. "I started paying attention." How I found out? It started with a receipt. 7 years after Emily's death, Daniel came home late one night and fell asleep fully dressed on the bed. I went to cover him with a blanket, and a folded piece of paper slipped from his jacket pocket. Ice cream. 2 cones, a playground near the east side of town. It shouldn't have mattered, but something about it felt intimate. When I asked him the next morning, he smiled easily. "Work meeting ran long," he said. Stopped to clear my head. I nodded, said nothing. But grief sharpens instincts. It trains you to notice what doesn't belong. I started checking bank statements. At first just casually, then with purpose. There were patterns, small transfers, monthly, predictable, children's clothing stores, pediatric clinics. I confronted him once, softly. "You spending more lately?" I asked over dinner. He laughed. "Inflation." I smiled back. That night, I cried in the shower so Lily wouldn't hear. 2 weeks later, I followed him. I felt ridiculous doing it, like a character in a bad movie. But when I saw him park outside a modest townhouse and walk inside without knocking, I waited. Then I saw the woman open the door. Then the child ran to him. "Daddy." The sound didn't reach me, but I saw it on his lips. That was the moment something in me died. And something else was born. The silent years. I didn't confront him. Not then. Not ever. I went back to grief counseling and told my therapist I felt numb. She said numbness was part of healing. I let her believe that. In truth, I was planning. I documented everything. Screenshots, copies, timelines, dates, lies. I hired a lawyer, not for divorce, for information. What would happen? I asked calmly. If a man used marital assets to support a second family without his spouse's knowledge? The lawyer's eyebrows rose. What would happen? I added. If he did that while emotionally neglecting his living child? Lily never knew. Not until recently. I protected her fiercely. She had already lost a sister. She didn't need to lose. Her father, too, not until the truth could no longer hurt her. I waited for the right moment, and Daniel, arrogant in his secrecy, handed it to me himself. Back to the party. Daniel sank into a chair, his head in his hands. This didn't have to be public, he muttered. You could have talked to me. I laughed softly. Talked? I echoed. Like you talked to me before introducing your second family at my birthday party? The guests murmured. No one defended him. The woman looked panicked now. You said this would be simple, she hissed at him. You said she was weak. Lily stiffened. I stepped closer to her. Careful, I said. You're standing in a room full of people who just learned what weak actually looks like. The boy tugged on her sleeve. Mom, can we go? My heart twisted, not for Daniel, but for the child trapped in his mess. Yes, I said gently before she could respond. You should go. Daniel looked up sharply. Wait. No, I said. This isn't about you anymore. They left in silence. When the door closed behind them, the room exhaled. Daniel looked up at me, eyes bloodshot. What do you want? He asked. Money? Divorce. I leaned down so only he could hear me. I want the truth to finish what your lies started, I whispered. Then I straightened. Everyone, I said clearly, thank you for coming. The party is over. People hesitated, then slowly began to leave, offering quiet words. Sympathetic glances, stunned silence. Soon only Daniel, Lily, and I remained. Lily turned to me, tears spilling freely now. How long? She asked. How long did you know? I brushed her hair back gently. Long enough, I said. Daniel stared at us, realization dawning. You planned this, he whispered. I met his eyes. No, I said. You planned this. I just made sure it ended properly. And as Lily held me, I knew the hardest part was still ahead. Because exposing a lie is easy. Living with the consequences, that's where the real punishment begins. The house felt unfamiliar once everyone left. Not quiet, hollow. Daniel remained seated at the dining table, staring at the empty wine glasses and scattered napkins like they were evidence from a crime scene. In a way, they were. Lily helped me clear the room in silence. Plates stacked, candles extinguished, decorations folded away like nothing monumental had just happened. Finally, she spoke. Was it all real? She asked softly. Everything in that box? Yes, I said. And more. She nodded, absorbing that. She had always been perceptive, too perceptive for her age. Losing her sister had forced her to grow up early. Losing her father, even symbolically, was doing the same. I'm proud of you, she said suddenly. I stopped. Proud? She met my eyes. You didn't let him make you small. Tears burned, but I didn't let them fall. Go to bed, I said gently. Tomorrow will be heavy. After she went upstairs, Daniel finally looked at me. You humiliated me, he said hoarsely. I set the last plate down and turned to face him. No, I replied. I introduced you. The next morning, Daniel didn't sleep, neither did I. By dawn, he was pacing the kitchen like a trapped animal. You ruined my reputation, he snapped. My job, my family, everyone knows now. Everyone always knew something was wrong, I said calmly. They just didn't know what. He stopped pacing. What do you want? He asked again, desperation creeping into his voice. Divorce? Fine, we'll split everything. I smiled faintly. That's the problem, I said. We won't. He frowned. What do you mean? I opened my laptop. Do you remember, I asked, why I asked you to sign those updated financial authorizations 3 years ago? He stiffened. You said it was for estate planning. And you didn't read them, I said. Because you never thought you needed to. I turned the screen toward him. Highlighted sections, legal language, dates. While you were busy maintaining your second life, I continued. You agreed, on record, that any undisclosed financial dependence constituted marital fraud. Daniel's face drained again. You also agreed, I added, scrolling, that misuse of joint assets for non-disclosed purposes would result in forfeiture of claim to shared property. His voice shook. That can't be enforceable. It already is, I replied. I had it reviewed, twice. He sank into a chair. You planned this for years, he whispered. No, I said evenly. I prepared. There's a difference. The fall. Within days, consequences stacked faster than he could manage. His sister stopped answering his calls. His parents demanded explanations and then demanded distance. At work, rumors spread. Not because I told anyone, but because secrets like his don't stay contained once exposed publicly. Then came the legal notices, child support reassessments, asset reviews, employment inquiries. Turns out, lying for 12 years creates paperwork, lots of it. The woman, his second partner, called me once. I answered. You knew, she said bitterly. You let him lie to me too. I didn't raise my voice. He lied to everyone, I said, including himself. She paused. What happens now? That depends, I replied, on whether you keep letting him decide for you. She hung up without another word. Daniel tries to fix it. One evening, a week later, Daniel stood in the doorway of the living room, holding a folder. I can explain everything to Lily, he said. We can do counseling. Start over. I looked at him, really looked. The man who once held my hand at our daughter's hospital bed. The man who cried with me. The man who used my grief as cover. There is no over, I said quietly. There is only forward. And you're not coming with me. He dropped the folder. You're punishing me, he said. This is revenge. No, I corrected. This is accountability. He laughed bitterly. You think this makes you strong? I walked past him, opening the front door. I think surviving you did, I said. Lily's moment. A few nights later, Lily sat with me on the couch, her knees pulled to her chest. He texted me, she said. What did he say? She handed me her phone. I never meant to hurt you. I hope one day you'll understand. She scoffed softly. Understand what? That he replaced us? I wrapped an arm around her. He didn't replace us, I said. He abandoned responsibility. That's different. She leaned into me. I don't hate him, she whispered. But I don't trust him. That's okay, I said. Trust is earned, and sometimes it's lost forever. She nodded. Then she smiled, small but real. I'm glad you smiled at the party, she said. It scared him. I smiled back. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. The box's final purpose. 2 weeks later, Daniel was officially served. He stood in the driveway, papers shaking in his hands, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. This is it? He asked quietly. After everything? I thought of Emily, of Lily, of 12 stolen years. This, I said, is the truth catching up. He looked like he wanted to say more. Apologize, beg. I didn't wait. As I walked back inside, I realized something surprising. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. The day Daniel moved out, it rained. Not the dramatic kind. No thunder, no lightning. Just a steady, quiet drizzle that soaked the driveway and blurred the edges of the house we'd once called a forever. He packed quickly, clothes, files, a few framed photos he hesitated over, then left behind. One was of Emily. He couldn't look at it. Neither could I. Lily stood at the top of the stairs, watching without a word. When he reached for her, she stepped back. I need time, she said. Her voice was calm, final. Daniel nodded, swallowing hard. For the first time, he didn't argue. The door closed behind him with a soft click. No slam, no victory cry, just the end of something that had been hollow for years. What he never knew. A month passed, then another. The legal process unfolded exactly as predicted. Assets were divided, but not evenly. The clauses he'd signed, the ones he never read, did their work quietly and efficiently. The house stayed with me. So did the accounts he thought were untouchable. But there was one thing Daniel never understood about the box. The documents weren't the real gift. The real gift was timing. Because 3 days after the divorce finalized, Daniel received a call. From his employer, an internal review had concluded. The reason? Financial discrepancies. Conflict of interest. Personal funds misrepresented as corporate expenses. The same receipts, the same patterns, the same carelessness. He lost his position within the week. I found out not because I asked, but because Lily's phone buzzed. She read the message, then looked up at me. He says he doesn't know how to start over. I took a deep breath. That's not your burden, I said. She nodded, deleting the message. The child left behind. One afternoon, there was a knock at the door. It was the woman. She looked different, tired, older somehow. The boy stood beside her, hands shoved into his pockets. "I'm not here to fight," she said quickly. I needed to say something." I stepped aside. She didn't sit. "He lied to me," she said. "About everything. The money, the future, even your grief." "I know," I replied. Her eyes flicked to the hallway. "The boy. He's struggling. He keeps asking why his father isn't around." I felt a familiar ache, not for Daniel, but for children caught in adult wreckage. "He deserves stability," I said. She nodded, tears welling. "I didn't know about Emily. If I had—" "I believe you," I said. She hesitated, then said quietly, "You didn't have to destroy him." I met her gaze. "I didn't destroy him," I said. "I stopped protecting him." She swallowed. When she left, the boy turned back once and gave me a small, uncertain wave. I waved back. "Lily's healing." Spring arrived softly. Lily started laughing again, really laughing. She redecorated her room. Took a weekend trip with friends. Applied for an internship she'd been too scared to try for before. One night, we sat on the porch watching the sky darken. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "What?" I asked. "Not yelling," she said. "Not exposing him sooner." I thought about it. If I'd screamed, I said slowly, he would have made himself the victim. Calm took that away from him. She smiled. "You taught me something." "What's that?" "That silence can be louder than rage." I squeezed her hand. "The final message." 6 months after the party, an envelope arrived. Daniel's handwriting. Inside was a single note. "I finally understand what the box was for." It wasn't revenge. It was closure. "I'm sorry I learned too late." I folded the paper carefully. Not because it mattered anymore, but because it was finished. That night, I placed the empty box back on the shelf. Not as a reminder of betrayal, but as proof of survival. The real birthday gift. On my 51st birthday, there was no party. Just Lily, cake, candles. She hugged me and whispered, "You saved us." I smiled. Not for anyone else this time. For me. Because the greatest gift I gave myself wasn't revenge. It was freedom.